I used to think reality was this fixed thing, like concrete beneath my feet, unmoving, unshakable. I thought what I saw was what there was, but I was wrong. I didn't realize I was the one holding the brush. I didn't see that every glance was a stroke of paint. That looking was creating. That attention is architecture. And every time I gave something my focus, I wasn't just observing it, I was energizing it, feeding it, choosing it. Have you ever noticed how the more you worry about something, the more it seems to happen? Or how when you're expecting kindness, the world softens and mirrors it back to you? That's not a coincidence. That's coherence. It's not magic. It's mechanics. Reality responds not to what you say you want, but to where your energy consistently rests. What you feel, what you expect, what you embody in the invisible language of emotion. There's this moment, small but powerful, when you pause and just witness. The breath gets quieter, the noise dissolves. And in that space, in that stillness, you start to see how fluid everything really is. Like mist, not stone. Like something waiting for instructions. Reality isn't solid, it's suggestible. And your attention is the suggestion. It's not that your thoughts create instantly. It's deeper than that. Your presence, your inner coherence, shapes the very field around you. You are a signal tower, a tuning fork, and what you're attuned to, you call closer. Like tuning into a radio station, you don't make the song play, you align with its frequency. And then, there it is. Heard, felt, lived. We spend so much time trying to change the world outside, rearranging circumstances, pushing against what is, but nothing sticks if it isn't supported by the internal signal. If your nervous system is in a state of fear, it doesn't matter how many affirmations you speak. Your body is still broadcasting survival. Your energy is still saying not safe. And so the field, the quantum sea around you, responds accordingly. Not because it's punishing you, but because it's loyal. It listens. It mirrors. It magnifies what's most consistent within you. The question isn't, how do I get what I want? The deeper question is, what am I rehearsing with my attention? What am I continually energizing with my gaze, my thoughts, my emotional patterns? Because that's what's growing. That's what's forming the scaffolding of my days. And here's where it gets beautiful. You don't need to control your thoughts. You don't need to monitor every flicker of your mind. You only need to notice where you're living emotionally, where your body feels safe, what signals your heart is sending. And gently, not with force, but with frequency, bring your attention to what aligns, what opens, what breathes. When you look at something with presence, with love, with belief, with embodied expectation, it begins to form in that invisible realm, not in the visible yet, but in the field, in the probability, in the timeline that's becoming more available to you because you're now a match for it. So when I say that looking is creating, I don't mean fantasizing. I mean stabilizing your nervous system in the energy of what you desire. I mean practicing trust so deeply that your body begins to believe it's already real. I mean observing not with desperation, but with devotion, quiet, anchored, certain. The world isn't happening to you. It's rising to meet you, and you are leading the way. There's something sacred about the way reality leans in when you soften your gaze. Not the hard stare of control, not the frantic grasping for signs, but the gentle, almost reverent attention that says, I trust you're becoming. That kind of looking carries weight. It holds vibration. It shifts timelines. Because in that gaze, there's no resistance, no contradiction, only coherence between what you feel, what you see, and what you expect. Imagine a seed underground. You don't yank it up to make it grow faster. You tend to the soil. You feel it's becoming before it ever breaks the surface. Your belief nourishes it. Your attention warms it. You trust the unseen. That's how manifestation works, not through proof, but through presence. We've been taught to wait for reality to prove itself before we believe. But in the quantum world, it's the other way around. Belief doesn't follow evidence. It generates it. Your inner world precedes your outer world. Always. What you place your awareness on begins to crystallize. Not because you forced it into form, but because your focus sustained its vibration long enough for it to materialize. And yet, this isn't about pressure. It's not about perfect focus or never doubting. It's about emotional fidelity, energetic loyalty, returning again and again to the frequency that feels most like truth to your heart, even if the world hasn't caught up yet, even if nothing has changed yet. Because the field is listening. Your every exhale, your every surrender, your every micro-decision to feel safety instead of urgency, it speaks, not loudly, but clearly. And that signal, when held with consistency, begins to reprogram the field around you. Not instantly, but inevitably. So often we think we need to do more, visualize harder, repeat more mantras, but creation doesn't respond to volume, it responds to vibration. And your most powerful signal is your state of being, not your effort, not your willpower, but your inner resonance, your emotional baseline. That's why nervous system work isn't optional. It's foundational, because if your body doesn't feel safe with what you desire, it won't let you receive it. If your subconscious still associates success with loss, or love with abandonment, or freedom with chaos, you'll unconsciously push away what you're consciously trying to attract. Not because you're broken, but because your system is prioritizing survival. So the real shift comes when you stop asking, how do I make this happen? And start asking, what do I need to feel safe enough to receive this now? That's the recalibration. That's where power lives. Not in forcing the outcome, but in becoming the version of you who no longer doubts its arrival. And that version, she isn't in the future. She's in your frequency. She's already present in the field, waiting for you to remember her, to embody her, to stop chasing and start collapsing the distance between you and what's already aligned. So we return, again and again, to the breath, to the body, to the quiet knowing. We hold the gaze, not with tension, but with tenderness, because we understand now, reality isn't fixed. It's fluid. It's feedback. It's listening to where we place our attention and responding with perfect fidelity. I remember once standing at the edge of a decision, heart pounding, logic circling like a hawk, and yet there was this softness in my chest, a quiet knowing. I couldn't see the whole path, just one illuminated step. But the moment I placed my full attention there, the ground beneath that step solidified, like reality was saying, yes, I'm with you, keep looking. And I did, not with force, but with faith. And every step that followed came not from certainty, but from coherence. That's the dance, isn't it? We think we need guarantees, but the universe doesn't respond to contracts. It responds to coherence. When your heart, mind, and body are all saying yes, even without proof, that yes echoes through the field. It bends probability. It shifts outcomes. Not because you pushed, but because you aligned. Have you ever felt the moment something clicked? Not outside, but inside? When your body finally stopped bracing, when your chest softened, when your thoughts slowed and you realized, oh, I've already shifted. That's when the world starts to rearrange itself. Not immediately, but unmistakably, because your reality isn't reacting to your actions alone. It's responding to your essence, your baseline frequency, the tone of your presence. And that presence is sculpted by where your attention lingers when no one is watching. Not what you pretend to believe, but what you actually expect. Expectation is a form of attention, and not all expectations are loud. Some are quiet, ingrained, invisible, but they shape everything. If you expect struggle, you find it. If you expect flow, you begin to notice where it already exists. This isn't delusion, this is direction. You're not escaping reality, you're instructing it, not with control, but with calibration. And calibration happens in the body first, before the thought, before the shift. It's in the way your breath deepens when you decide to trust. It's in the way your shoulders relax when you stop scanning for danger. It's in the moment your nervous system says, it's safe to believe this now. That's when timelines collapse. Because that's when you become the version of you who no longer postpones what you already are. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And what you are is a rhythm, a pattern of vibration, a constellation of beliefs felt deeply enough to shape matter. That's why a single shift in attention, when it comes with full emotional commitment, can alter the entire trajectory of your life. We're not talking about shallow positivity. We're talking about embodied resonance. When your body, breath, and being are in agreement, even briefly that agreement echoes. It reverberates into form, It pulls new possibilities from the quantum into the visible, and it all begins with where you place your gaze. So ask yourself, where am I looking with fear? Where am I reinforcing the very thing I say I want to shift? Where am I feeding timelines I no longer wish to live? And more importantly, where can I look with love, with hope, with unwavering softness? Because that's not just a preference. That's an instruction to the field. That's how you create. Not by chasing, by choosing. And choosing happens moment by moment, gaze by gaze, breath by breath. Reality isn't waiting for you to prove yourself. It's waiting for you to become available, to look and truly mean it. There's a reason it often feels like things don't shift until we surrender. Not give up, surrender. The kind of letting go that isn't defeat, but divine participation. When we release the need to control the outcome and instead become intimate with the energy we're emitting, the field responds differently. Because now, we're not broadcasting scarcity disguised as effort. We're broadcasting coherence born of trust. And trust is a frequency, not a thought, not a mantra. It's how your chest feels when you believe the support is already there. It's how your gut softens when you know the path will unfold. Not because you force it to, but because you are finally in rhythm with what's meant for you. Most people think manifestation is about convincing the universe. It's not. It's about convincing your nervous system. Because when your body believes, reality complies. You're not here to fight your way into alignment. You're here to become safe enough to let alignment be natural, organic, obvious. Imagine walking through your life like a tuning fork. Every environment you enter, every person you meet, they either resonate with you or fall away. Not because you said the right thing, but because your energy no longer accommodates what isn't aligned. You don't need to push anything out. You simply rise. You refine your frequency. And anything that's not a match fades, like mist in sunlight. This is what happens when you stop reacting to the noise and start responding to your knowing. Attention becomes sacred, intentional, selective. And in that selectivity, power emerges. You realize you no longer have to fight for your desires. You simply have to become the one who is naturally aligned with them. So when fear creeps in, and it will, you don't need to resist it. You meet it. You notice where it pulls your attention. You ask, what timeline is this fear anchoring me into? What reality is being rehearsed here? And then you choose again, gently, deliberately. You place your gaze back on the timeline you do want. Not because the fear is gone, but because the vision is more compelling. That's quantum maturity. Not the absence of doubt, but the presence of decision, again and again in favor of coherence, in favor of truth. You stop outsourcing your signal to external proof. You stop waiting for circumstances to give you permission to believe. You become the permission. And then, without force, the world begins to shift. Not because you manipulated it, but because you met it with the frequency of remembrance, of readiness, of real embodied belief. This is where things begin to feel surreal. Not because you've escaped reality, but because reality is now reflecting something higher, something more attuned to who you actually are. Synchronicities increase. Coincidences become confirmations. And time starts to bend, not in fantasy, but in fidelity to your frequency. Because the field is always listening. It's not selective. It's responsive. Whatever you rehearse emotionally, consistently, becomes instruction. And when your instructions are infused with love, trust, and alignment, the field delivers not just what you asked for, but what you've become. And so we keep looking, not anxiously, but artfully, with reverence, with rhythm, knowing that every glance, every breath, every shift in attention is a brushstroke on the canvas of becoming. It's wild, isn't it? How the subtlest shifts in your inner world begin to ripple outward in undeniable ways. You start noticing the way people respond to you differently, the way opportunities seem to find you with less effort, the way time opens, not because the world changed, but because you did. You became a new signal, a new possibility, a new reference point for what's real. And it all started with a gaze, a moment of choosing presence over panic, a quiet decision to direct your awareness, not reactively, but reverently. That's what creates momentum in the quantum, not grand gestures, not forceful leaps, but micro-alignments, tiny recalibrations that say, this is who I am now, again and again. Because you're not just seeing your reality, you're seeding it. Every glance, every feeling, every assumption is a seed planted in the field. And the field doesn't judge. It grows what you water. If you water fear, it blooms in form. If you water coherence, it crystallizes into clarity. If you water gratitude, the field multiplies what you're already celebrating. So the question becomes, what am I fertilizing with my focus? When you wake up and immediately check for problems, you're rehearsing a timeline of threat. When you breathe before speaking, when you savor the quiet, when you notice beauty, you're reinforcing safety, abundance, enoughness. And that emotional rehearsal becomes your embodied signal. Not through perfection, but through presence. You don't have to feel amazing all the time. You just need to feel honest. And keep returning to the version of you who remembers the truth, who knows the power of her gaze, who knows that looking isn't passive, it's participatory, it's active creation. And if you've forgotten for a while, that's okay. You're not off track. There is no off track. There's only resonance. And if you're here, listening now, then something in you is already attuning, already realigning, already choosing to look again, more softly this time, more steadily, more surrendered. Because manifestation isn't something you force, it's something you allow. It's not more doing, it's more becoming, more being the version of you who is no longer chasing reality, but anchoring it, calling it in with her consistency, her calibration, her clarity. This is the paradox. You don't need to do more. You need to see differently. You need to look through the eyes of someone who remembers, not who they were told to be, but who they truly are. And when you see from there, everything begins to rearrange. Not all at once, but undeniably. You'll feel the current shift. You'll notice the right words come at the right time. The person calls. The door opens. Not because you controlled it, but because you matched it. And when you match it, you merge with it. You collapse the distance between now and next, between desire and reality. So slow down. Breathe deeper. Let your gaze soften. Because looking is not a waiting room. It's a womb. It's where creation gestates, where new worlds are whispered into the weave, where the quantum listens and forms itself in the image of your attention. Sometimes, I think about how many realities I've passed by, not because they weren't possible, but because I wasn't looking. I was so entangled in what was wrong, what was missing, what hadn't arrived yet, that I became fluent in absence. I mistook longing for alignment. I thought desiring was enough. But attention is the true currency of creation. And wherever it flows, energy grows. It's like this. You walk into a garden. There are flowers blooming and weeds growing. You don't deny the weeds. You just choose not to water them. Not because you're pretending they're not there, but because you know what thrives with nourishment. Your gaze is nourishment. Your focus is fertilizer. Your emotional resonance is rain. And when you stop feeding what you don't want with the fuel of your awareness, it begins to wither. Not instantly, but inevitably. Because energy follows instruction, and the instruction is always given through attention, frequency, embodiment. So when you say, I want peace, but you focus on chaos, your signal is chaos. When you say, I want love, but you scan for rejection, your field amplifies threat. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because it's honest. It reflects not your words, but your embodiment. And embodiment is quiet. It doesn't shout. It lives in the way you breathe, in how you speak to yourself when no one's listening, in what you assume before you even open your eyes in the morning. That's your real vibration. That's your actual request to the quantum. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent enough to create resonance, enough repetition of safety, enough rehearsal of trust, and the field begins to echo your inner world. Things click, people shift, patterns dissolve, and you start to feel that you're not creating reality from scratch. You're revealing it. It was always there, waiting for you to become a match. And that match doesn't come through strategy. It comes through softening, through remembering, through choosing, again and again, to look through the eyes of who you're becoming, not who you've been, not with force, but with frequency. You don't need to know the whole plan. You just need to know the feeling, the tone, the texture of the reality you're calling in. And then, Moment by moment, you choose to live in harmony with that tone, to act as if it's already true, not to fake it, but to be it, to let your nervous system feel it, to let your gaze stabilize it. And when you slip, because you will, you return, you breathe, you place your attention gently back on the timeline that sings. That soothes, that stretches you in the best way, because you are not here to force creation. You are here to become creation, to feel it as your breath, your body, your natural frequency. The quantum doesn't need convincing, it needs coherence. And that coherence begins with a gaze, steady, sacred, surrendered, that says, I remember who I am. I remember what I'm creating. And I trust that my looking is enough to lead it into form. There's this soft power that comes when you stop needing reality to catch up, when you stop needing proof before you believe. Because by then, you're no longer waiting, you're embodying. You're no longer asking the mirror to change before you shift your expression. You're smiling first, and suddenly, the reflection smiles back. Most of us were trained to look at what is and call it real. But what's real is what you consistently broadcast. What's real is what you rehearse emotionally. What's real is the timeline you give most of your presence to. Everything else is just momentum, old data still echoing in the field, waiting for your shift to override it. So if you want to change your life, you don't start by changing your life. You start by changing your gaze. By changing the timeline, you are energetically feeding with your awareness. And you do it softly, subtly, like choosing a different radio station, like humming a new melody until it replaces the old one. You see, reality is not static, it's suggestible, and suggestion happens through emotional continuity, through vibrational authority, through becoming so familiar with the energy of your desire that it no longer feels like the future. It feels like home, like the obvious next breath, like something you no longer need to chase, because you've already become it. That's when the field starts bending, when life starts whispering in synchronicities, when the right people show up not because you summoned them, but because you finally stopped resisting them, because your signal became clean, clear, coherent. There is a deep quiet that comes with this work, not because it's passive, but because it's rooted. You don't rush, you don't grasp, you don't perform, you embody, you refine, you stabilize, and your gaze becomes a sacred instrument, not a desperate searchlight, but a sculptor's hand. And sometimes that means doing less, saying no, creating space, because attention is finite, and what you feed grows. So you protect your attention like sacred currency. You notice where it leaks into lack. You bring it back, again and again, not with judgment, but with devotion. This is the quiet revolution of quantum manifestation. Not screaming into the void, but whispering into form. Not fighting for your future, but remembering it as already present, already available, already held in the field, waiting for your eyes to truly see it. And when you do, when your attention meets your embodiment with consistency, the shift becomes visible, tangible, lived, not because you forced it, but because you finally became receptive to what was always possible. You start to live less from reaction, more from revelation. Less from trying to fix the old, more from choosing the new. And in that choosing, you become the bridge, the collapse, the convergence point between what was and what will be. And it all began with where you placed your gaze, with how you looked at your life, not with fear, but with fidelity, not with doubt, but with deep, anchored knowing. Looking is creating, not metaphorically, mechanically, energetically, embodied truth, echoed in form. So now, as you sit here, maybe with a heart still learning to trust, maybe with a mind that flickers between knowing and doubt, I want you to feel something deeper than thought. I want you to feel the invitation that's been humming beneath every word, to stop waiting for your reality to change before you feel safe, and to start feeling safe so your reality can change. Because this is the pivot point, the sacred hinge. Not when life finally gives you what you want, but when you decide to live as if it already has, to wake up and breathe like it's here, to speak like it's already unfolding, to look, really look, at your world and say, I am the observer, and where I look, life blooms. That's not fantasy, that's frequency. That's how timelines collapse. That's how desire becomes destiny. Not because the universe made an exception for you, but because you finally became available to receive what was already circling you, waiting for your attention to land, steady and sure. And when it does, when your gaze no longer flinches, when your signal no longer scatters, the world responds with an almost impossible grace. Things click, conversations shift, the improbable becomes obvious, not because you did more, but because you became more aligned, more regulated, more resonant. This is how we collapse time, not by racing faster, but by getting still, by becoming such a vibrational match to what we desire that time is no longer needed for the bridge, because you are the bridge. Your gaze is the opening, your body is the portal, your attention is the command. So take a breath, not a shallow one, a real one. Let it remind you that creation is not out there, it's in here. In the way your chest rises when you remember that you are not separate from what you seek. In the way your body softens when you stop resisting what's already on its way. In the way your gaze becomes a prayer, clear, calm, coherent. Because attention isn't just noticing, it's an energetic signature, a declaration to the field. And the field responds, not to what you beg for, but to what you embody, what you trust, what you choose to consistently look at, even when it's still invisible. You don't manifest what you fantasize. You manifest what you familiarize. You manifest what feels emotionally inevitable. And that inevitability doesn't come from proof. It comes from presence, from the quiet rhythm of a heart that no longer asks when, but whispers, I'm ready. So if you remember anything from this, let it be this. Reality is not solid. It's soft. It listens. It leans. And where you place your attention, you place your becoming. Looking is not passive. Looking is initiation. Looking is creation. And your gaze, when fused with frequency, with safety, with embodied trust, it's not just seeing the world, it's sculpting it. It's selecting it. It's saying yes to the version of you that was always waiting in the wings. So look, gently, powerfully, on purpose, because reality is watching you back. And it's ready to become whatever you're ready to believe.